Too predictable, it's too repetitive, the characters are bad production quality. What the fuck does that mean? Today, we're gonna try to figure out what that means, and try to figure out why you like the anime that you like. Something not making sense can be referring to like anything. So let's start off with dialogue. Honestly, even at first when I was writing the script, I thought I could narrow this mistake down to only one genre, isekai namely. But when I really thought about it, genre doesn't always matter. But what actually matters is the target audience it's written to. Obviously, when I watch reincarnated after 9,000 years as the strongest demon lord Fridge, so what? I'd find the dialogue cringe and unrealistic. But if I look at an anime where I'm supposed to be the target audience of, like Odd Taxi, I tend to find all the conversations sounding very realistic and authentic. So let's analyze an example. At first, we get shown this dialogue. This is meant to look irrelevant to make the world feel more real. Then we get this line that sort of introduces the guy we're interacting with, and then we get the other hilarious character introduction to our main character. This interaction isn't only funny, but also not that crazy. The other guy isn't really trying to be a dick, he just seems awfully unaware. And I think that nuance, along with the comedy and the realism, is what makes his dialogue so good. Now we've talked about dialogue, let's move on to motive. By motive, I simply mean what a character desires, and importantly, how they act upon that desire. For example, in Frieren, we quickly come to understand that Frieren regretted not getting to know her companions better, namely Himmel. So, right after Himmel dies, she does fuck all for 20 years and then goes like, oh right, these guys are still alive? Like, what? Keep in mind, this is a 1,000-year-old elf that has seemingly never had anyone close to them die. There's never any nuance about any of this, so to me it makes your entire character feel very unconvincing. Contrary to Frieren, a recently published anime called About the Movement of the Earth showed a beautifully convincing motive in the character of Rafa. He is this child prodigy that is shown to be extremely smart, logical, and curious. He only desires an easy life and the truth about heliocentrism, ironically making a gravely illogical decision for the pursuit of truth, getting himself arrested and put on death row, so as any other normal 12-year-old boy, he then poisons himself to painlessly end his life early. That was motive. Let's talk about fights. Sometimes fighting will be a fucking aura farming competition, and some people love that. But to me, it makes the fighting look extremely unrealistic. This can kinda happen in a bunch of different ways. One where the bad guy knocks the main character down, just to not take advantage of them being knocked down and inevitably losing to some plot armor bullshit. Like in Frieren. No wonder this didn't win Anime of the Year. Or one where the bad guy is obviously so much stronger than the main character, yet loses to some kind of plot armor giving him the battle IQ of a rock, like in Index. But there are very few anime that get this fighting aspect right. One of them is From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. Okay, look, not this scene where he's 1v9ing training dummies, but this scene. I think this scene does a great job of showing what it's mentally like to be in a fight without showing any weird, unrealistic, flashy moves. Now we're done with fights, let's finally talk about world building. World building basically has two parts to it. One, the literal world, like the look, the magic, the monsters, etc. And the other, to me, more interesting part of world building is the functional world, meaning the rules of this world and how characters interact with them. For example, in Made in Abyss, in one of the opening scenes, Rico throws down this rope to cautiously climb down this wall. This scene is so simple yet effective because it establishes the rule that danger really is everywhere, and that characters are already trained to avoid that danger. Another good example of how characters interact with the world is in Frieren. At some point, they go and fight this sealed off demon guy that, most interestingly, pioneered the meta for offensive magic 80 years ago. However, the characters, or rather everybody, seems to now know the counter to this offensive magic, which is now, 80 years later, known as basic defensive magic. This scene beautifully shows that we, as humans, actually adapt to the shit that's going on around us, and this is my favorite part of the whole anime. Moving on to the second reason, when anime is or isn't entertaining. I'll keep this section a bit more brief, so let's just jump into the first point. Genre. I don't think a lot of people consciously think about what genre they watch. They're just kind of naturally drawn towards them, and that makes perfect sense. Every genre comes with its own set of topics, and people are just simply going to watch what they're interested in. Another way anime tries to keep you entertained is by its characters. Now, describing a good character is really subjective, but I can kind of explain it in one way. The character is either likable, relatable, or interesting. For example, I don't think this guy from Beastars is a likable character. However, his personality traits aren't only kinda relatable, but his flaws also make him a deeply interesting character. Even though an anime can have one good character, it might still feel dry, which is why every anime needs some amount of comedy and a bit of foreshadowing / hinting. I think an anime that does a great job of this is Steins Gate. It relies heavily on hinting and comedy to carry you throughout the story. If it was missing only one of those, I probably would have never finished it. So now, understanding these concepts, you can now start to answer these questions for yourself. When does dialogue or world building feel unconvincing? What characters do I like or dislike, and why? At some point, you will hopefully find some kind of consistency in your logic, and once you've found that, then you can ask yourselves why those are your values and where they come from. As an example, here are my own conclusions. I enjoy anime that feel real. Shows like Maiden Peak, Peak Taxi, or Steins Peak stand out to me because they show people as they truly are, flawed, growing, and shaped by their decisions. I despise it when stories feel fake or when characters act in irrational ways just for the sake of the plot. That's likely because I've spent years playing competitive games and competed in martial arts where thinking clearly, spotting patterns, taking chances, and learning from your mistakes matters most. Those games taught me to value logic and fairness, and now I look for the same things in stories. On top of that, I've learned to spot real emotions and honest connections from a young age, which makes me now dislike stories where the emotions feel forced or rather unrealistic. I want characters to make smart, believable choices and to change in ways that feel earned. In short, I enjoy anime that treat both emotions and logic with care, where characters grow, actions have meaning, and nothing is there just for show. Liking or disliking anime is super complex and super subjective. There are lots of things that I didn't mention in my video, so the least we can do is respect this complexity and accept the judgments from the people made around us. They like what they like for a reason, and that's perfectly fine. Anyways, fuck free.
Loop so nice, no second device. I'ma come back and win this shit twice. Like